Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery here. It is Monday, November 7th, 2022. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time. We were not together on Friday because of the big workshop we did for a group of attorneys down in Houston, and that went remarkably well. We'll be talking more about that on tomorrow's training. But today, we're going to be talking about the Small Business Stimulus Grant Program. This should be shared on your screen. And we sent this out to each of you yesterday as a reminder to join us today. This is a big deal that if you follow this simple process, I'm 100% confident that you're going to be able to help a lot of small businesses and generate an adult income for yourself. So let's start with the background, and then we'll get into the stimulus grant program. But we're going to start with the background. At any point you have questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and just type it into the Q&A, the question and answer box on Zoom, so we can address those. All right, so what's the background? White label partners, many of you, are positioned to earn $12,500 or more by helping small businesses participate in the Small Business Stimulus Grant Program. The participants in the grant program are guaranteed at least $100,000 to start or grow a small business. Well, that's a pretty good start to our training, isn't it? So we've just clarified how you and I can go out and help just about any, we'll show a few requirements, but in general, you and I can go help any small business get at least $100,000 through the stimulus program, and that's going to put at least $12,500 in your pocket. Talk about a win-win scenario. So beyond that, how do we do that? We've made it super simple, because what we've learned is out of our distribution partners, there's some of you that are sophisticated. Quincy, Alfred, Bernard, and many of you, of course, are Frankie and others are sophisticated in the ability to handle more complex processes. But we have a good number of distribution partners that, for one reason or the other, they don't perform because they don't do well in a complex environment. So this is designed to be simple. So it's so simple that all you would need to do is share the information below. So it's cut and paste ready. We're to go through it in just a moment, but share the information below and put in your phone number, whatever number you want them to text. Because in the scripting that we're going to go through in a moment, it has our number, but you don't want to put our number on it. You want to put your number on it. So this means you don't have to go create flyers and landing pages. And those are valuable if you want those, but you don't need it. This is cut and paste, super simple. Then each prospect that contacts you, and trust me, they'll contact you. We beta tested this before we rolled it out to you all today, and it's working amazingly well because it's simple and it's attractive. But the point is, for each prospect that does contact you, they're going to text you their email address. All you need to do is send them your access to capital agreement, and you can send that to them however you want. Some of you are using Adobe, which is frankly what we use. Some of you are using DocuSign, which is fine. We used to use that. Got a little expensive. I've told the story. In our highest volume month, we literally spent $10,000 on DocuSign, where Adobe is much cheaper. But you can use whatever type of e-signature software that you want, or you can set it up, and Scott can, of course, set it up for you, our Chief Marketing Officer, on a landing page. Because ultimately, we need to get the clients under contract. The contract is the access to capital contract. And so, again, you can use an e-signature software or set it up where they're accepting terms and conditions on a landing page. All right, so that's the background. So that's not something that you would share with the prospect, right? That's between you and I. Not that it's confidential, but starting at this point going down, this is what you would share with the prospect. You could email it to them, you could text it to them, you could post it on Craigslist, you could post it on social media, you could post ads, but here is the content that's good to go word for word. If you want to change it, you can change it, but it's good to go. Let's look at it. So first subheading, assistance available. The Small Business Stimulus Grant Program provides a minimum of $100,000 for businesses with fewer than 50 full-time equivalent employees and less than $5 million in annual revenue. Pre-launch and startup companies may qualify. So that's the introductory statement. So again, what we're talking about here, I'll make it smaller, a little bit smaller. So frankly, this is your copy and paste. This is ready to go. Of course, you'll change the text number. So this is literally the scripting if you were to say it, or the words if you're going to write it. Okay, now we're going to address eligibility criteria, as I hinted towards a moment ago. An applicant must be a U.S.-based small business owner, either been in business as of November 1st, 2022, or open sometime during this calendar year, be in operation at the time of the application or plan to open within 30 days, have 50 or, well, technically fewer than 50 full-time employees, have less than 5 million of annual revenue in both 2020 and 2021, if they were open. Of course, if they weren't open, then they would have had less revenue because it's not applicable. And not be an ineligible business. Can't be doing things like illegal activities, gambling, and so forth. So we've covered, in summary, what the assistance is, the eligibility criteria. Now let's talk about the use of proceeds. The eligible use of proceeds include operating working capital expenses for your small business, such as purchase of inventory supplies, lease or purchase of equipment, operations, hiring staff, location expansion, marketing, or other permitted uses. And then initial funding is normally dispersed within 3 to 5 business days after a completed application is received. Then we get down to the call to action. How do they apply? Applicants can request an application by texting their email address, not to us, but to you. So you would put in your text line. And then you can, of course, change the deadline if you want. It is set up to create urgency. So here it is. We'll call it a campaign. This campaign, through our beta testing, has been crazy successful. And so it's simple. You don't have to have landing pages. You don't need flyers. You need these words. And you need to get these words, preferably as written here with a couple of the small edits we talked about, in front of prospects. And people will respond. You will get I suspect you'll get lots of responses. What type of response you're going to get? You're going to get a text from them. They're going to provide you their email address, as stated here, and then you're going to send your access to capital agreement to them to sign. So who has questions, comments, concerns on this new campaign? You got word for word scripting, whether you want to say it or write it, and it's working. It's working really well through our beta testing. Have no reason to think that it won't continue as each of you engage in this. So I'm looking for feedback, questions, comments. So Alfred, Andrea, Bernard, Collis, Doug, Frankie, Jeanette, Jose, Kat, Lon, Linda, Magnus, Mandy, Paulie, Pauline, Phyllis, Quincy, Shanice, Terrence. We have 321 of you on here. So I'm looking for specific conversation here so we can flush through it. Let's see. Bernard brings up a good point. Why is the owner on payroll not an ability to enroll? So that is a good question. Let's see here. This is parole. So Mr. Barchi, this says parole. So if the owner is on parole, they don't qualify. But parole is different than payroll. Payroll is a structured distribution of income from the business to a W-2 employee. So sorry for the confusion. There's a difference between parole and payroll. Okay, Frankie's asking, where does this money come from? Through the Access to Capital program, we can work with a number of different, and we do work with a number of different funding sources. Lines of credit, installment, revolving, SBA, non-SBA, many different options. So what we're going to do is put together a funding package for them and then identify the right source or sources of capital that best suit their criteria, their mitigating circumstances. So Frankie, up front, we don't know, but there's many sources of capital. What you and I do is figure out what's best for them. Jeanette asks, this is for white label partners, not RVPs. Well, if I were you, Jeanette, as an RVP, I would be using this to recruit white label partners because they're going to be able to drive massive volume doing this if they just follow this exact scripting in writing or verbally. So I think it's applicable for both, but you're technically right. This is what a white label partner could use to fill their funnel. And RVPs financially benefit from that. Shanice asks, are the loans personally guaranteed? It varies. There's not one source of capital, as I just mentioned. So as we take them through the Access to Capital program, we'll figure out what source or sources they're best suited for. And from that, some sources have PGs, personal guarantees, and some don't. Okay, let's see. Doug says free program. You know, I would argue, you could make the argument either way. Is this a free program? Well, how do you define free? We're not asking them to pay anything up front for access to capital. I think all of you know that. There's no upfront cost for access to capital. The cost of participation is funded out of their capital raises. So, I mean, it's up to you. I think you could argue it as free or almost free, but that's up to you. Let's see. Quincy asks, is this a marketing campaign for access to capital? Obviously so. Let's see. What other questions does anyone have? So our goal here is to roll out a campaign that is simple enough that any of our white label partners can implement. We've provided the title. We've provided word for word instructions that can be shared verbally or in writing. You have a simple call to action. You just simply ask the prospect to text you their email, and then you send them your access to capital agreement, which you all should probably be familiar with. If not, we can talk about that offline. Frankie asked if they're getting a grant or a loan. Well, they're technically getting debt-based capital or equity-based capital, depending upon their capital raise. The grant that we received allows them to receive their refundable deposit back. So as you know, there's a $2,500 that they're getting, that they pay to have their loan package created, no different than what we've talked about many times before. And then that $2,500, if you want it refundable, is refundable back to them due to the grant allocation. Frankie asked about people currently enrolled in Access to Capital. Well, this is Access to Capital, isn't it, Frankie? Right? This is Access to Capital. This is not a different program. It's a different marketing campaign, but it's the same program. All right. Who else has questions or comments on being able to use this to be able to drive more volume, to help more people, to help start and grow small businesses? What could you do that's more honorable, that's more admirable than helping start and grow small businesses and getting them the capital that they need to be successful? And at the same time, you're pocketing 12.5 or more by doing so. I mean, it's the perfect win-win scenario. Doug talks about setting this up as a campaign, and that's right. You're more than welcome to work with Scott or whomever you want to be able to set up a campaign to promote this. And so you could certainly do that. Absolutely. So this in itself is what we define as a campaign. And if you wanted Scott to build a drip marketing outreach of text and or emails, he certainly is more than capable to do that. Just you'd reach out to Scott. If you don't know how to reach Scott, let us know, and then we'll get you connected with Scott. Our support information is here at the bottom of the page. Thank you, Doug, for that. All right, so thank you, Frankie. So who else has questions on this campaign? If you market it like this, you should, I'll go as far as to say you will, but you certainly should get an amazing response. So let me ask a few of you. What do you think, Alfred? Is this a campaign that you could commit to trying to roll out this week? Andrea, will you commit to trying this campaign this week? Bernard, will you? Collis, Doug, Frankie, Jeanette, Jose? And if not, I'm curious why. I'm not going to hold you accountable for it, but if your goal is to help more people and for them to raise capital and for you to make money, this is a nice turnkey, tight pitch, a tight campaign that's going to get people's attention. The Small Business Stimulus Grant Program provides a minimum of 100,000 with fewer than 50 employees and less than 5 million annual in revenue. So we've got the exact wording, and what we did in our beta test, and so this isn't some hybrid, this is what we put out. Let me go highlight it. This here. We sent this out and we received incredible response. Now, again, in your case, you'll want to change the text number. In our beta test, we had one of our distribution partners, and bless her soul, we shared it with a few of you in advance as we tested this. And one of our distribution partners sent this exactly with our text number. So I was talking to her when I was down in Houston. It's like, well, I don't know that that's a good idea, because the goal as a white label partner is to get them to respond to you, not directly to us, because if they respond to you, then you can get them under contract, and you can get them under contract for access to capital with the Adobe, DocuSign, or the landing page, however you want. But obviously, you want the prospects to respond back to you. All right. Samuel's asking a good question, and that's a little deeper, but we'll go into it. So what you could do is get different numbers to use to receive text. You wouldn't have to necessarily use your direct mobile phone number. So it's focused specifically on this. What he's looking at doing, he's got a couple in-house reps that works for him. So he'll probably go get a couple Google Voice numbers. And for each rep, they'll have their own Google Voice number, so they can promote this out. And then the responses come to that designated number. And then when that response comes in, then he can turn around and send the access to capital agreement to the inquiries, the leads, and can easily track the source. So again, this is designed to just be super simple. You don't have to have a flyer. I wouldn't even have a flyer. I don't think a flyer is important. I think some people want marketing pieces as a crutch. This is the content. You just get this content out in front of people and you'll get responses. All right, Andrea says she's going to do it because she feels like this has been her struggle. And I understand that, and that has been a barrier for some of just getting the right wording. This wording has been very effective. Terrence, our CPA on the call, is going to start it today. Excellent. Yep, Paulie's mentioning targeting those that have gone through the PPP or EIDL loans, and that's a good target audience. Shanice asked about the funding. Yeah, so everyone is guaranteed $100,000, and that's in writing of funding, so no worries about that. Frankie asked a good question. So when we met with the attorneys in Houston, there's a couple things that came out of it. Number one is they helped us put together this wording. And so it was certainly, I can't be credited with it, but it was put together by a smart group of people, advisors, of giving just enough information to motivate people to move forward, but not too much. So that's one of the outcomes. The second is that we're going to announce this week a bit of a simpler way for clients from the point of enrollment to the point of funding. And I'll table that because they're still putting together the fine pieces on that. But the short answer is no, they won't have to wait 28 days to go through the 4 modules to get funding. That is being improved and revised, and there's going to be details of that coming out this week. But it doesn't mean that the 4-week program won't continue. It doesn't mean that we don't have the 4 modules and can help them. But I'll just give you the summary, the synopsis. What we're going to do is soon begin providing access to capital clients, access to all 4 modules immediately up front. So rather than dripping it to them. So number one, they won't be required to go through the financial literacy. If they want to, fine. If they don't want to, they don't have to. But they'll have access to everything immediately up front. So that will help those that just want to cut to the chase and go right to funding. They still have the ability to learn the material, but it's not strung out over time. That's the short answer of that'll be available. Frankie's asking how this will help people that are already enrolled in Access to Capital program. Well, this is the Access to Capital program. So if someone's already enrolled, frankly, in this, well, I didn't word that well. If they're already enrolled in Access to Capital, then you don't need to pitch them on this, right? Because they're already in it. But if you have someone that's not enrolled in Access to Capital, this might be the wording and messaging that could help you get them closed. All right, who else has questions, comments, concerns on this topic? Again, we'll get later this week, once the revisions are finished, of how we're going to be able to help provide the 4 modules immediately up front rather than strung out over 4 weeks, because I know some of the clients don't want to wait 4 weeks. I realize that. Our goal is to be able to get them into the funding committee in 1 week or less, if that's what they want. Granted, financial literacy is important. If they go through it, they're probably better off, but we don't want that to be an obstacle or barrier. We realize we have some people that just want to go specifically to funding. But we'll get to that later. That's a separate conversation. Who else has questions, comments, concerns on the Small Business Stimulus Grant Program, which is now open for enrollment? Currently, the deadline is November 30th. So that deadline is subject to change. It could be pushed out further. But what you may want to do is have a deadline such as this, or even narrower, to create urgency. You want people to have urgency to sign up. How do they sign up? Once they have texted you their email address, then you're going to get them under contract for Access to Capital, either using Adobe, DocuSign, or your online terms and conditions. However, you're getting them under contract. But we want to create some urgency. Let me see if there's any other questions here. Oh, Kat asked about the grant. So The grant element is up to you as the white label partner. A number of us use a grant allocation to make the refundable deposit refundable. Now, not all of you do that. So obviously after their first tranche, there's no cost up front. After their first tranche, then they would normally be paying you a $2,500 refundable deposit. That puts money in your pocket normally 5 to 10 days after the client's enrolled. So if you're following the plan, enrolling 2 clients a week, you're putting at least $5,000 up front in your pocket weekly. That's the goal. Make sure each of you are bringing in at least $5,000 a week off the deposits. So then it's your choice, as we've talked about on separate trainings. Do you want those deposits to be refundable or not? If the deposit is refundable, you could use a grant allocation to refund that back. So in other words, that's the reason that they're getting it back. But again, I respect some of you are not making the deposit refundable, so you wouldn't want to link it that way. I understand. That's up to you. You're the CEO of your business, right? And so you set the pricing the way that you want. If you want to set up some internal grant allocations, you can do that. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. But this type of wording and language, as was put together by the group of attorneys in Houston, is very, very effective. It's legal, it's compliant, but it's very, very effective if you care to use it. Don't have to use it if you don't want to. If you're already generating at least 8 to 10 clients a month in access to capital, you may not even want to make any changes. You may just want to keep riding that horse that's getting you where you need to go. But some of you are not consistently enrolling 8 or more clients a month. I'm very confident that this campaign will generate a real spark in your volume. All right, who else has questions, comments, concerns on the new Small Business Stimulus Grant Program campaign? It's open as of today. We currently have the deadline set as November 30th, but you have the right to change that. You could change that to be an earlier date to create more urgency. You could make that a later date. I would keep it as a fairly tight date because you want urgency of people to sign up. And again, I know some of you are increasing the minimum above 100,000. Some of you are guaranteeing $250,000. A few of you are guaranteeing $1 million. That's your choice. That's your prerogative. But the bottom line is this turnkey program is ready to go, and it's generating some amazing results in terms of enrollments. Anyone else have any questions regarding this campaign? So again, this was sent out to each of you yesterday. I personally sent it to each of you that are a white label partner or an RVP. If you didn't get it, check your filters. If you can't find it, get with support and we can get you another copy, but you should have it. Questions, comments, concerns before we hang it up for today? I'd give it a try. I'd try it at least for a week. This week, launch this campaign, see what sticks. But I think you're going to be very, very pleased with the results. Very, very pleased. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, we'll see you back tomorrow morning. Have a great day. Bye-bye.